Hey everyone, Dan here. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps a lot. And also keep in mind that these are my own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. These are not meant to be, nor should you take them as investment or trading advice in any way, shape, or form. Do your own due diligence, put in the work for yourself, and make your decisions based on that. Enjoy. All right, today we're going to take a look at Digital Turbine, ticker symbol APPS. Apps was requested by somebody in the comments in a previous video. If you have a ticker that you'd like me to cover, please drop that in the comments below. If I respond and tell you that I've got it and added it to the list, then rest assured it'll be coming. If you don't see my response, then just drop it again a few days later just to get it back to the top of my queue in case I missed it. All right, so apps, as you see, had a pretty big rundown this year from about 102.56 all the way down to 47.57 relatively recently. And there's a few different things at play here that are looking quite interesting, actually. Now, one of them is obviously that there's this gap here, and we saw that there was this previous gap up, right? Same kind of situation. And even this one was a gap up after a run up. So a little bit different preceding situation, but that may not matter. We do see this gap formed February 4th, and then it was filled. If we count, I don't know, this wick doesn't come quite down all the way, so we'll say it was filled here about a month later. So maybe what, five weeks or so, 4 or 5 weeks. So this gap came about at the end of August. So the question here is it going to come down to fill this gap at all toward the end of September? So that's sort of one question that I have. Now the other question is the extent to which there could be a couple of other things forming. You see there's this scoop here. Now it's a little bit weird because there was this herky-jerkiness just before the gap up, but this does look like a cup. This doesn't really look like a handle at the moment, but if it does come down relatively quickly here, could it start to make that formation and then have a big push up potentially? The other thing to question here is if this is reverse head and shoulders, head, shoulder, shoulder. That would be the other thing that I'd be looking at. And those are obviously bearish formations. Obviously, if it came down to fill this gap, that wouldn't be a bullish move. But those bullish formations of a reverse head and shoulders and of a cup and handle could be playing out. I think it just will take some more time to see what it is that it wants to do with this gap, and can it get through September and maybe even the first half of October and not fill it, and then maybe that would give some additional indication that it's just going to move on from that point. Now we're sitting in the 60s right now. So if I look back and just sort of ignore the current price action, just look previously where some good support and demand zones were. This is one that looks pretty obvious to me. This is where it caught support here. It was previous resistance there, flipped from resistance to support here. Obviously dipped below it a little bit here, so this might be another solid level down. Let's see. Yeah, pretty good. Support and resistance, flipped to support. So just a couple of relatively tight in zones there. Not that bad, $8 apart. But this one aligning pretty much with the bottom of that gap as well. So if it does come down to fill that gap, it might be able to punch itself back up just based on a support zone being close by. Though there have been so many drawdowns since the beginning of the year, I don't know if that selling pressure would sort of spook folks additionally or again and make them come down heavy. But we do see this 61.51 support being the most close in for the time being. There's obviously a bunch of other support right here. Let me kick this up a smidge. So we see support, resistance. So that would be its first resistance zone up as far as I would see at 67.91. And then we can throw one more into the upside and just revisit it if it gets through these to the up or the downside. And looks like it's right about the top of this previous gap, really. Support, resistance that turned to support that turned to resistance, and resistance that turned to support and then fell through again. So 75.63 would be the next area up. So it might have some decent run room there. If it can get support at 67.91, there is the potential that it could show some run up possibilities there. Now, the other thing, I don't actually know if this is forming, but we can try to put it in and see what it looks like. If we throw a trend line up here of lows that this is holding. Now, I know it cuts through this a little bit, but this captures most of the other price action. And then if we toss in a downtrend line, obviously can catch a bunch of areas here. We do see the potential for these things to compress the price action over the next, say, well, through the end of September, really. It's sort of the time frame in question as it pertains to this gap. And if it does start to come into play and come to a peak here, if it's going to make a big push one direction or the other, I would potentially look at that as well. Can it overcome this descending previous bunch of lower highs, or is it able to sort of buck that trend and maybe make a run towards 75 if it does get that high? Or is it going to get pushed down even further, or even prior to then, is it going to lose this uptrend support and get pushed down quicker? It's something to keep an eye on. Obviously, a lot of good buying pressure coming in here a few days ago, but that MACD buying pressure is sort of dwindling at the moment. So it's looking like it wants to throw a bearish crossover. It's just sitting right at or just slightly above the baseline. So it didn't get to extend itself very high there after being pretty low on the MACD for quite some time. So whether or not it can sort of reverse trend here and just end up with this little like loop-de-loop, kind of like you see here, right? It did this a couple of times, started to curl in and then bounced back up, took a big curl in, nearly crossed over, and then was able to jump up again. Now, obviously that was pretty short-lived, but it doesn't have to be. So I would keep a close eye on the MACD because it has faked out before, so it could be doing it again. And I'd pay close attention to these blue supply and demand zones, obviously the gap and the upper trend line. And then if it does get itself up here, what it does when it bumps its head on this white line here. On the MA side of things, just to take a quick look, I don't know if they're playing any factor. So you do see a nice curl here on the 20 MA curling up toward the 50. So that could be a bullish crossover, and it's gaining ground pretty quickly. So if it can cross over there, that could be an additional bullish lift to the price, could help it make an attempt at this $67 mark here. That said, pretty recently, just in the past month or month and a half, we have had a slew of bearish crossovers, the 20 crossing below the 200 and the 50 crossing below the 200. And obviously now it's in a downtrend with the price action being below the 200. Obviously hasn't lost it there. It really kind of plummeted quickly. But we'll see what happens. But there are some mixed signals here for sure. Sort of just a lot of things in question that should sort themselves out relatively soon. And hopefully that means that apps is going to pick a direction and go with it. Now, on the analyst side of things, big upside per the analysts. They're showing 40% return potential with this price target of 11.24. Oh, this is the wrong apps. Goodness gracious. All right, let's see what's going on here. Even better return potential. I was like, wait a minute, that price does not seem right. Target price 102.50, 64.5% return potential, 5 buys, 1 holds. That's pretty good spread. We do see also in the last 12 months a lot of sells coming out and certainly not as many buys. Now, if we bring it in closer, the last month, you have had 3 buy transactions from insiders, 327K. So that's potentially a really good sign. Those stretch back 3 months. Okay, so those were there even 6 months ago. Okay, so it's just a little bit less of what came in about a year ago. So be sort of interesting to see, how those play out, and if that thing sort of means anything. I always have questions around whether or not insider movement means something. Sometimes it seems like it really lines up with a catalyst that's coming. Sometimes it seems like it's just folks kind of trying maybe for optics to show that there's interest from inside the company at this share price, saying, we think that this could be undervalued and we want to take some opportunity to capture some for ourselves. Now, short sellers are getting a little bit steeper on this one. So as it gets close to 10%, that's where I start to worry about how much pressure the short sellers are inducing into the downside risk of the stock. So I would just keep an eye on the short interest. And if it starts to get above 10%, then just know there could be some pressure coming in from the short sellers, and kind of see how that influences your decision, if at all, on whether or not you're going to go long on the stock or what have you. But yeah, getting up there a little bit, but still, I would say at this level, probably not a huge factor in what we've seen here. It may have been heavier at this point. But anyway, good luck if you're in this one. I'm a little bit disheveled since I realized that I had the wrong apps pulled up there. That really threw me for a loop. But we'll try to slow down and settle down, and just end the video nicely. But like I was saying, good luck if you're in this one. I certainly wish you the best, and I appreciate you watching. I will see you in the next video.